Entitled people, you gotta love them, or love to hate them at least. Anyway, I'm Andy, this is the RR Show, and this is the best show on the internet, bringing you the best Reddit stories that anyone can find. And on the subject of entitled people, there is no one worse than where we're headed today. So grab your tea and your popcorn as we jump into r/EntitledParents. So sit tight, get your popcorn and your tea-coated dummies at the ready, and let's jump in with our first story from 4Y4Chi. So entitled that she controls their lives. My mother always put me and my siblings second in her priorities. She and my dad divorced when I was 7 years old. At the age of 15, she and my older siblings pulled the plug on my father forever. At 21, I tried to commit suicide and failed. The reason is my mother's partner's sexual harassment towards me and my mother's choice to believe him. I left home and went to try and make a better life for myself. Started university, met my future wife, and also developed as a person. I truly lived except for one aspect: family. It's been 18 years since I last spoke to my dad, and at my grandmother's funeral last month we met again, chatted, and caught up with one another. It was so natural, and since then we've been talking almost every day. Thanks to that, I learned that my mother was actually extremely manipulative towards him and us, her kids. She was very careful with me, never sharing a thing with me, but telling my siblings every little damn thing I shared with her in private. She used everything she could to force me to stay with them. Despite me explaining to her I have PTSD due to my childhood under her roof. She controls both of my siblings to this day, feeding them lies about me while trying to get me back to her. Recently, I was forced to ask her for financial aid, and she gave me an ultimatum. Come back and talk to us, or else I'm not helping. I refused. Honestly, I know I'll be fine. But to her I said I'd rather sit in jail than get helped by you. My wife said to me, "You did it, you broke the cycle." I'm glad to have my dad back after 18 years apart. He and I are extremely similar. Regarding dear mother, I hope to see her again in court. Wish me luck. Our next story is from Holden Position 4. When my parents were thrown out of a child's birthday party because they asked the stupidest thing imaginable. For those who read my previous post about how my parents tried to cancel my 14th birthday, they knew very well what my brother was like during birthday parties that weren't his own. And they tried to enable his behavior in any way they could just because he's high-functioning autistic. Well, that rampant spoiling didn't go well with people outside of the family. Like, at all. This happened, I think, when my brother was around 6 or 7 years old. A neighbor boy down the street was having his birthday party, and my brother got invited because they were sort of friends. But probably because they knew my parents would bring a gift. And they did. I don't remember what I was though, nor do I really care. My parents dragged me along to this party, even though I'd had rather stayed at home and played video games. I was bored and sitting down almost the entire time, so I got to witness pretty much the whole situation. It started when my brother was caught picking up gifts off the table and shaking them. The mother of the birthday boy told him to stop, and my parents tried to defend my brother and say, "Oh, he was harmless." But the lady knew what my brother was really like and had my parents move him away from the presents. There were some games that the kids were playing. Don't remember what they were, but I do remember my brother tried to be the center of attention as much as possible. With each game, the birthday boy got first pick or turn on them, because it was his birthday. But my brother freaked out because he didn't get to be first. And my parents did ask the birthday boy's mother if my brother could get first pick or turn. And the lady not only refused, but told my parents to get my brother under control, or we would be asked to leave. Then came time for the cake. The mother lit the candles for the birthday boy, and the adults started singing the happy birthday song. They only got as far as singing the birthday boy's name in the song before my brother burst into a tantrum at the table. He grabbed the side of the table and started trying to violently shake it. My parents had to hold my brother back for a moment. And then I saw my mother go up and talk to the mother of the birthday boy again about something. And the poor lady looked positively disgusted. And I learned later that she'd asked her to let my brother blow out the candles first, and then they could redo it. The lady told my mother it would be best if we left, and then they went back to trying to redo the birthday song. Well, my brother couldn't take it, and ran to the table and shoved the whole cake right at the birthday boy. I mean, he used his arm to literally clothesline that cake and heave it right into the poor kid's face. The whole room was silent for a few seconds, and then a bunch of the kids started laughing. Then the birthday boy started crying, and the adults were mortified, except for my parents. My mother just started hugging my brother tightly and acting like a Karen by saying this could have all been prevented if they'd just let her little boy blow out the candles first. The mother of the birthday boy was cleaning up chocolate cake off her son and screamed at my parents to get out. The other kids there started crying because it had finally hit them that now there was no cake. My mother started dragging my brother out, but he broke free of her and then pushed over the table with all the presents on it. I grabbed him and held him in a headlock till my parents grabbed him. I apologized profusely to the mother of the birthday boy and said I wasn't on my parents' side in the matter. Yeah, that's right. Little 12-year-old me had to apologize for my own damn parents. My dad yelled at me to get moving or I could walk home. I said I'd walk home. It was literally a quarter of a mile down the street. I stayed and helped clean up the mess my brother made. The lady thanked me and said that I was a good egg. But my brother was just rotten. Someone went out and got another cake while the birthday boy had to take a shower because, well, he was covered in cake. All of the mess was cleaned up and they redid the birthday song. After the party was over, the mother of the birthday boy wrote something out on a piece of paper. It was a handwritten invoice to my parents for the destroyed cake, along with a written threat to call the police as someone there with a camera caught everything. I handed the invoice to my parents, and they really did not look happy when they read it. Then they gave me the cash and told me to take it back to the lady. So I did. And that was pretty much it. Neither that kid or his family ever associated with my brother or my parents ever again. But the messed up thing is that at another birthday party months later, the same situation nearly repeated entirely. My mother asked the parents to let my brother blow out the candles first, gave bullshit excuses as to why. And they outright refused, and my mother acted like a total Karen. My brother tried to knock down the cake. I was on guard and intercepted him. Then we were told to leave. It was after that my brother was no longer invited to birthday parties that were not relatives. And then on my next birthday in the same year when I turned 13, my parents tried to get me to let my brother blow out my candles. And my aunt tore into him for it. It was then, I guess, that my parents decided that if I couldn't share, then next year I shouldn't have a party at all. And any previous readers know. Damn, yeah, we covered the first story in a previous episode somewhere. That's just terrible. Our next story is from Hold'em Position 4 as well. A little follow-up. Parents let my brother steal from me until I got my aunt involved. Back when I was still a kid, it was very hard for anything to be exclusively mine. And as my brother got older, he craved money for things above all else. He and I got allowances, equal allowances, so that was sort of fair. I say sort of because he didn't have to do chores for his while I did. But that's in the past now because my brother is now having to do all those chores for nothing. My brother always wanted more money though, whether he spent it or not. He loved having new things. But sometimes he'd just save the money instead, which is odd because you'd think him the kind of kid who would splurge his savings on the first thing he wants. My brother and I both got allowances of about $25 a month, and I was pretty thankful for it. I usually saved most of my money though, but my brother always wanted more. One day, as a teenager, I came home to find my room had been ransacked, and the only thing gone was my money. I'd hidden it to try and keep it from my brother. I thought I'd hidden it well, but he found it anyway. My mum was home when he did it too, and she acted like she didn't even notice. But there's no way she could not have heard him tearing my room up. I called her out on that during the intervention, and she just cried and made excuses about my brother being special. Two other family members told her to shut up and own up to it. My room was on the first floor, right near the living room. The door was completely in view of the couch. And when I pointed this out back then, my mum just made the, "But he's special, he's not like you," excuse for my brother. I said I wanted the money back, and my mum just made more excuses. And my dad did too when he got home later. So yeah, excuses then, excuses now. Back then I did eventually get the money back because I refused to let it go. I heard my brother screaming as they took the money out of his piggy bank and gave it back to me. And they had the most disappointed looks on their faces, like I had just robbed my brother, even though he had robbed me. But they couldn't tell me off because I wasn't in the wrong and they knew it. I don't imagine many kids getting in the kind of situations where they're more right about something than their parents very often. A few months later, and the whole situation repeated. My brother ransacked my room again and stole the money I'd hidden again. That time, my parents didn't want to do anything about it, and basically said they couldn't bear to see my brother so disappointed from taking his money. I reminded them that stolen money wasn't his money, and it was really crappy that they were just sitting back and letting that happen. My dad yelled at me to go to my room for saying that, so the next day I rode my bike to my aunt's house and told her everything. She came back home with me and asked my parents if they really let my brother steal from me and did nothing about it. My mum just started whining that my brother is special needs and she didn't want to make him cry again. And my dad backed her up. My aunt just gave them both that narrow-eyed look and reminded them they have two sons and that my feelings mattered too. And what they were doing was very wrong. And it meant that my brother would never respect boundaries and would think he can always get away with stealing when he gets older. My aunt asked me openly how much my brother took. I stated the number, which at the time was everything I had save for the few bucks in my wallet. My aunt gave my parents an expectant glare. My parents tried making a few more excuses, but my aunt had a counter for each one. Finally, my parents went into my brother's room, and a moment later my brother was screaming. My parents came back with all the money my brother took and practically threw it at me for making my brother cry. My aunt then told them off for acting that way when I had done nothing wrong, and they picked up all the money they'd thrown at me and gave a pretty forced apology. My aunt said she'd be severely disappointed in them if they let this situation repeat. And before she left, my aunt offered for me to hide my money at her house in a lockbox she had. I took her up on that and started keeping my savings there. My brother ended up ransacking my room 2 more times looking for money. But I was keeping every cent I had at my aunt's house. My parents actually asked where I'd hidden it. I refused to tell them. Then I asked why they wanted to know so badly anyway. My dad instantly got defensive about it. My mum calmed him down and they didn't ask again. Since they couldn't find my money in my room, my brother figured I must have hidden it somewhere else. So he started tearing the house apart, one room after another. And who was made to clean up the mess? Why, yours truly, of course. My parents started to blame me for the whole situation, but when I asked how I was at fault for not letting my brother steal from me, their only counter was, "My brother has special needs." I swear, they used that line with me 1,000 times. That was something else I heavily berated my parents for in the family intervention. The final straw came when my brother ransacked our parents' bedroom. My parents had a small suitcase safe that they kept some cash in, and my brother locked himself in their room, then took the whole safe and started bashing it around on stuff to try and get it open because he couldn't find the keys. By the time my parents were able to get the door open by breaking it open, my brother had destroyed the room and never even got the safe open. He just sat on the floor clutching it and crying about the money inside it. My dad was so angry that he turned red. And then he actually started yelling at my brother and grounded him. A very rare sight for me to see back then indeed. Then my parents forced my brother to help clean up the mess. After that, my brother never ransacked mine or my parents' rooms looking for money again. But he'd still go rooting around every time he got an idea where my savings might be. So, I started acting like I was giving hints by repeatedly going into certain places while he was watching. He ransacked the backyard shed, dug a bunch of holes in the yard under the back porch, and even ransacked the attic. My parents really hit their breaking point with the attic and grounded my brother again. They never figured out I led him on either. My parents did eventually figure out I was keeping my money at my aunt's house, and they didn't argue with my reasoning for doing it. But either my brother overheard, or one of them spilled the beans to him because the next time we visited my aunt, my brother tried to hunt for the money. But my aunt yelled at him to stop, and my brother would just sit on the floor and cry. This happened a few times, and my aunt bluntly stated she'd press charges for any damages if my brother ransacked anything, and also kept a digital camera on hand to record anything if need be. My parents heavily scolded my brother to stop looking for the money. It wasn't his, and he can't have it. Cue more screaming and crying that he wants it like a 3-year-old, even though he was 7 at the time. Then my brother said he didn't want to go to Auntie's house anymore, so my parents visited less. My aunt visited us a lot more than we visited her anyway. I was pretty much able to keep my money away from my brother till after I moved out. He's never managed to steal cash from me again. His classmates at school were another story. He was caught looking through the backpacks of other kids many times, and he was forced to return stolen stuff and then sent home, where he'd cry to mum and dad, who would then have words with the school, who berated them on letting my brother think that what he was doing was okay. They had to teach my brother that it's not okay to go through other people's stuff. And I actually heard him say, "But I wanted what they had," a few times. This excuse got used again when my brother stole an envelope with birthday money from a cousin during their birthday party. He tried to stuff it in his shirt and walk out with it. But the cousin noticed it was missing, and I suspected my brother right away and pointed everyone to him. He ended up crying and thrashing when my dad found the envelope hidden in his shirt. We left that party early too. Man! Wow, that is one hell of a saga. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this episode. As always, I cannot wait to see you in the next one. So until then, refresh your tea and your popcorn and get ready for it, because it'll be coming on Friday. And until then, take care. Peace out.